Okay, good evening, everyone. So today we will discuss about three different features of S3. Those are for like just informational purpose. And out of those, the first topic which we are going to discuss is server access logging. By using this feature, Amazon S3 is able to log each and every type of access information. Let us say you created one S3 bucket and you have stored a lot of objects there. You uploaded, you deleted, you created, you are doing a lot of actions on that bucket. So this feature will gives you all the information about at what time which object was created, or at what time which object was accessed, like downloaded, from which IP address the access was accessed. Each and every information will be recorded using the server access logging. This is a small option or a small feature. Just we have to enable it so that each and every information will be automatically recorded and stored in another S3 bucket. So if you see your Amazon account, we have created a lot of S3 buckets, right? So we have created a lot of S3 buckets. So out of the things, I would like to check what exactly is happening on this particular S3 bucket. In that bucket, there might be 100 files or a 1 file or 1000 files. That doesn't matter. If I enable server access logging and assume that you people are trying to access any object available in this particular bucket, then the server access logging feature will record the information about what exactly you are doing and were you successful with your action or not. Let us say you are trying to download the object, like you are trying to open the object. What we will do, you will send a get action, right? And if the object is publicly accessible, then you will be able to access successfully. If the object is not a public object, you cannot access the object using the object URL. Let us say two people are trying to access the same object or two different objects. One is a public object and the second one is a private object. Whenever you are trying to access the public object, you will be able to open the object successfully. Let us say image. Immediately, this server access logging will identify that some user from an IP address. You will have some IP address, right? That IP address will be recorded and it will record that he is performing an action called get action. And at what time you are trying to do that, that timestamp will be recorded, so and so date and so and so time. And then finally, were you able to access the object successfully or not? If you are able to access successfully, it will record the status code as 200. 200 is always the success code. If you upload any object, we can see that upload complete, right? In the backend, the code for that success is 200. If some other person is trying to access a different object, which is a private object, he will get like access denied error, right? So it will record the information like 403 success code. Success code is 403, which is kind of access denied. Again, in that case also, from which IP address the user tried to download the object, like a get action, date, time, final code, final status, he is successful or failed. That information will be recorded using the server access logging. So these are called as a log files, right? Where that log files will be stored. So what we have to do is we have to create a separate bucket. In that bucket, you can store the logs of each and every S3 bucket. So what we can say is, okay, so if you store the log files in the same S3 bucket, what will happen? Whatever the log files are getting generated, if I store the same log files in the same S3 bucket, then what will happen? It will create a kind of infinite loop. Let us say in this bucket, in the selected bucket, I stored one object. So you are trying to access the object. So it will create one log file, right? So immediately it will create the log file. Creating the log file means put action. That log file creation to be recorded as a log file. That can be recorded in the same file or in a different file. If you are recording in the same file, again, there is an action called modify action, right? Overwrite action. Again, that information has to be recorded. So this will create an infinite loop. So always it is not recommended to store the log files in the same S3 bucket. So we have to create a separate bucket. In that you can create multiple folders if required. Each and every folder you can use for different buckets. I can create folder 1, folder 2, folder 3, and so on. So the first bucket logs will be stored in the folder 1. The second bucket logs can be stored in the folder 2. The third bucket logs can be stored in the third folder. Like that you can configure. There is no point of creating a separate bucket to store the log files of each and every S3 bucket. In general, we don't enable that feature, but we have that feature, and let us discuss about that. So coming to this server access logging, this feature will record all the actions happening on S3 bucket. What kind of information it will be record is, it will record the source IP address, the below mentioned information will be recorded in the log file. Source IP address. What is the meaning of a source IP address? From which IP address the user is trying to perform some action, and then what kind of action is getting performed, like put, get, delete, overwrite. These are the different actions can be performed. Which action was performed? Date, time, how he accessed, the mode of access, like using the browser or using the CLI or using the SDKs, by using which method the user is performing the action. And finally, the success code. Finally, is he able to perform the action successfully or he got failed? So always the 200 indicates the success. Also 200 is called as a success code. Even if you try to access the website, if it got loaded successfully, in the backend, it will send a status code as 200. 403, forbidden access. 404, page not found, right? Like that, for every error or for every status, there is a code. For successful, the code will be 200. If you see any other code, the action was not completed successfully due to permission issues or due to some object not found issues, whatever it is. So now what we do is enable server access logging on S3 bucket. Let me say my bucket 08 July 2022, and store the logs in another S3 bucket. I can say access logs. So here what exactly we have to do is first create S3 bucket. Again, create another S3 bucket. So this is to store the log files. The second bucket is to store the log files. Somewhere we have to store the log files, right? and then enable server access logging on the first bucket, on this particular bucket, and select what information to be logged and into which bucket the logs to be stored. So here the advantage is you can select which information to be recorded using the server access logging. There are like n number of actions you can record, n number of informations you can record. Out of those, you can select which information to be recorded, because there are like some information which might not be useful for us. We can ignore that, and you can select what information to be mentioned or included in the log file. So now let us see how to enable this server access logging and how to configure it. So go to your Amazon account and navigate to the S3 service. Then create our first bucket. I mean the bucket on which you would like to enable the access logging, and just scroll down and click on create bucket. Right. So now what I do is I will scroll down. So this is the one which we created just now. We have to create another S3 bucket, and that bucket we are going to use to store all the information of your S3 bucket access. So click on create bucket. Create bucket. So we have two buckets on which one bucket we are going to enable server access logging, and the log files I would like to store in this particular S3 bucket. So now the next step is how to enable access logging, right? So click on the bucket on which you would like to enable server access logging. Click on that bucket, then click on properties tab and scroll down. So here is an option, server access logging, in which it will log the request for access to your bucket. Every request will be recorded, but by default that will be disabled. Now just click on edit, select enable. So here you have to provide the bucket name, target bucket, in which bucket you would like to store the information. So what if you would like to enable server access logging on 5 buckets? Do I need to create 5 different buckets to store the log files? No, you can give the bucket name, you can select the bucket, and at the end, you can use some folder name like this. So in that folder, the information will be recorded. If you don't want to maintain in that folder format, if you do like this, every information will be recorded into the bucket directly. The problem with this is, if you configure on multiple buckets, all the log files will be combined and they will be available in the same place. It will be difficult to identify which log file belongs to which bucket, right? That's why always it is better to use some prefix. So I can say bucket 1. But this bucket to be exist in that S3 bucket. I mean, this folder must exist. I think I will use folder 1. Then click on save changes. So here, if you go to this particular bucket, so here we have to create that folder 1. Add folder, folder 1. So every log file, wait, what happened? Okay, sorry. Create folder. So the log files of that particular bucket will be created into this particular folder. So if you go to the bucket, you can see the different folders. For every bucket, you can create a separate folder, or for identification purpose, you can create a folder with the name of the bucket. So that will be very easy to identify, right? So if you click here, only you can see the log files of that particular bucket. Okay. So now what I do is I will upload one S3, one object into the bucket. Already we enable access logging, right? So everything is ready, and from now onwards, it will start recording the information. Now upload an image into the S3 bucket and access the object using the object URL. Upload an image into the S3 bucket and access the object using the object URL. So that information will be recorded. That information will be recorded in a file, and that will be available for you. That we will see. So this is the bucket. Let me upload one image or anything, that doesn't matter. Okay, let me upload. Object is getting uploaded. Object got uploaded successfully. So here is the URL, right? So if I try to access the URL, that information will be recorded. But here I got access denied. The same information will be recorded. Okay. So, but here the information is not readily available. If I go there, you cannot see that information readily. It will take some time. It will take some time, and the log file will be generated with the same name. This is not like kind of instant information log files. It will take like 15 to 30 minutes of time to get the log file to be created. And it will record each and every action happening on your bucket. But the log file will be available with some delay. Okay, so that is about server access logging. Before closing the session, we will verify that the log file got created or not. And then we can check what kind of information is recording in that particular log file. Okay, all right. So let me cross check whether we have enabled, I clicked on save or not. Yes, we enabled. Okay, so that the log file will be available in some time. So in the meanwhile, we will go with another concept, which is the last concept on S3, which is S3 MFA delete. S3 MFA delete. And sometimes you might get a question on this particular concept in the certification, but in the real time, we don't use that feature. But for the certification point of view, you must know what it is, what is the purpose, and how to use it. Okay, can you guess what is the use of this S3 MFA delete? Any guess? Actually, that is called as a MFA delete. Just to give the differentiation, I am using the S3 MFA delete. What might be this MFA delete? First, what is MFA? Multi-factor authentication. What is the use of that multi-factor authentication? Before allowing you to do something, it will verify in two different steps. Already we have seen for login, right? We enable multi-factor authentication for login purpose. But what is this MFA delete? This MFA delete will prevent accidental deletion. If you enable this MFA delete, nobody can delete the object accidentally. That means when we can delete accidentally, by mistakenly, instead of selecting one object, we might select a different object, right? So this MFA delete will prevent any user from deleting the object without providing the MFA code. If you don't provide the MFA code, it will not allow you to delete the object. And moreover, if you enable the MFA delete, Nobody can delete the object from the browser. Only this will work with the CLI, command line interface tools. You cannot enable or you cannot disable this. You have to follow or you have to use the CLI only. So first, let us discuss about what is this MFA delete. MFA delete can be used to prevent the accidental deletion of the objects from S3 bucket. So we can delete the objects by providing the MFA code only. Without providing the MFA code, we cannot delete. So have you ever seen that it will ask you to enter the MFA code while you are deleting the object? Yes, when? I never seen. While deleting the object, it never asks you to the MFA code. When it will ask you the MFA code is for login purpose. That is not the MFA delete. Login is a different, MFA login is different and MFA delete is different. MFA login is to log into the Amazon account. MFA delete is used to delete your objects by providing the MFA code. And to enable this MFA delete option, the mandatory thing is bucket must be enabled with versioning. To configure the MFA, versioning must be enabled on S3 bucket. And one more limitation is only root user can enable or disable the MFA delete on any S3 bucket. Let us say you created another user called user1. Okay. And if you are trying to enable the MFA delete, you cannot. You must be a root user to enable or to disable. What about deleting the object? Any user can delete if they have the permissions on S3 service. But even you are an administrator on Amazon account, you cannot enable, you cannot disable, or even you cannot manage the MFA delete feature. You must be a root user to enable it. And this MFA delete feature can be configured using AWS CLI only. You cannot use the browser. You cannot use the browser. So if you are not supposed to use the browser, means everything to be done using the commands only, right? Okay. So now what we do is the steps. First, we will create an S3 bucket and the versioning is mandatory, right? So we will enable the versioning and then we will enable the MFA. And then we will try to delete the object from the browser permanently, not temporarily. Permanently means select the show versions and select the version and click on delete, which will fail. So you cannot delete even as a root user. Then we will go to the CLI and we will try to delete the version permanently without providing the MFA code. Again, you will get an error. Then we will provide the MFA code and then we will delete it. Okay. And unfortunately, recently I disabled MFA on my Amazon account. So the root user must be enabled with the MFA. Without having the MFA, how can I use the MFA code to configure that, right? That's why the minimum prerequisite is root user must be enabled with MFA login to configure the MFA delete on S3 bucket. So if your Amazon account is not enabled with MFA for the root user, first step you have to do is enable MFA login for the root user. If you already enabled, you can ignore that step. enable MFA login for the root user. Also, we need another user to check the delete and everything, right? So already we have one user called user1. I think yesterday we created, right? With only S3 permission. Enable MFA login for the IIM user1. So he has a S3 full access. Without having S3 full access, he cannot delete the object, right? For that reason, the user1 must require S3 full access permission. Then create S3 bucket, MFA delete, and enable versioning, because versioning is mandatory. Then enable MFA delete using AWS CLI tools. Enable MFA delete using AWS CLI tools. Then upload an object, because to delete the object, we must have some object, right? Upload, let us say, two objects. Just to be on safer side, just upload two objects into the S3 bucket. Then delete the object as a root user and user1 using the browser. And then delete the object as user1 using the AWS CLI tools without providing MFA code. So here, instead of delete, you have to use the permanently delete. Always we have to use permanently delete, not the just a delete, because on a versioning bucket, the delete and the permanently delete both are completely different, right? Finally, we will delete the object by providing the MFA code successfully. The last step is possible. In any other way, you cannot delete the object using the browser or without providing the MFA code. Just write down all these steps. We can perform each and every step individually. So on my Amazon account, I don't have a MFA enabled. So first I need to enable MFA for the root user and the user1 also. First, those two things I need to configure. Then we will go with the next steps. So how to enable MFA for the root user? How to enable? First, log in as a root user, because I am the root user, so I need to log in as a root user. Then click on security credentials, which you can get from your account name. So here you can see multi-factor authentication. Click on that. If there is an MFA already enabled, you can see the MFA device code here, like not code, we call it as ARN of the MFA device, a unique Amazon resource name. Click on activate MFA. Select the virtual MFA device, click on continue, show QR code. Let me configure it. Okay, so okay, 513232, and I need to wait for the second code. We have to enter two successive codes. If you have already MFA enabled, you can ignore this step. Click on assign MFA. On my account, MFA got enabled. How can I cross check that? If I log out and if I log in again, while logging in along with the password, it will ask me to enter the one-time code also. So let me cross check that. Okay, it is asking the MFA code. So my account is configured with the MFA code. In the same way, the user one also requires MFA login must be enabled. So for that, I will use a different browser to log in as a user one. Otherwise, I have to log out as root user and I have to log in. Or you can use that other mode is there. What is that? Incognito mode. You can use the incognito mode to log in as a different user in the same browser. Okay, let me log in as user one. I think it requires either account alias or account ID. Okay, I am username user one. So for user one, there is no MFA enabled, right? Because without providing the one-time code, we were able to log in. So let me go to the same page, same step, and let me configure or let me enable MFA for the user one also. Okay. We haven't provided what we call that the permissions to enable MFA. We have MFA, what we call that. We have a policy, right? That policy we have to apply. Otherwise, the user cannot do anything in the user management except the change password. Okay, just give me a second. For that reason, what I do is I will apply the full permission to the user one. I will give full permission so that he can enable his MFA. So add permissions and I will attach a different policy. Generally here you can attach force MFA policy, because in the force MFA policy, we will allow the user to change his own MFA device and all the things. That's how we can allow the users. Okay, no issues. Now, okay, now the question, if you apply a new policy, the changes will be applicable immediately or it will take some time, or the new permissions will be applicable once the user log out and log in. If you observe the user, while the user one is logged in, I applied a new permissions, right? Those new permissions will be automatically applied or the user has to log out and log in. Automatically applied. Any other answer? Do you see any message here like warning or error? No, because the permissions will be automatically applied. No need to log out and log in. Any policy, if you apply a new policy, the policy will be applied immediately. There will be no delay and no need to log out and log in also. Yeah. So here you can change this admin access just to avoid the confusion. Okay, 623764. So I have two users on my Amazon account. One is a root user and the other is a normal user one. Both the users are having the IIM MFA login. So we are ready to test the MFA process, MFA delete process. Okay. Let me log in as user one. So now first thing what we have to do is we have to check that how to enable MFA delete on the S3 bucket, right? Okay. So here, let us follow the steps. Now we have to create an S3 bucket and enable versioning. Without enabling the versioning, you cannot enable MFA. And also I mentioned that MFA cannot be configured using the browser, right? That also we will check. So in the Chrome browser, I logged in as a root user. So whatever the things I'm doing, those all belongs to the root user. I'm executing everything as a root user. Click on create bucket, give the name of the bucket, enable the versioning, click on create bucket. What happened? Bucket name already exists. Okay. So click on create bucket. So the bucket got created, right? Okay. Then we have to enable MFA using the CLI tools. Before doing that, let us observe, is there any option to enable MFA using the browser? Go to the bucket, click on properties. So here you can see there is one option called disable. There is no option to click on edit, but there is no option to enable this one. So to modify MFA delete settings, use the CLI, SDK or REST APIs. You cannot use the browser. You cannot use the browser to enable MFA. So now we have to get the steps. Give me a second. Let me get the steps. There is a document. Somewhere I have stored it. Wait a second. So ignore this document. Just I will show you the commands. Okay. So what all we have seen is first we have to check. We have to configure the MFA delete, right? So whenever you would like to log in as a root user, first we need to configure what we call that your command prompt or the CLI tools with the credentials. How to configure your command prompt with the root user credentials? By providing access key ID and secret access key. I think in the last session or somewhere we configured it, right? If not, you can use AWS configure, enter. Then it will ask you the access key ID, type the access key ID, secret access key, region, output format. Now what I do is I would like to check the list of all S3 buckets in our AWS account. Now we are going to check the list of all S3 buckets in our AWS account, and we will select one S3 bucket to enable MFA delete. So this is the command. But in the last session, I have given a different command also, right? What is that command? AWS space S3 space LS. AWS space S3 space LS. That also gives you the list of all buckets. And this also gives you the same thing. But these are some kind of advanced command. Hit enter. And it will show you the name of the bucket along with the creation date. That is the difference. If you use that ls command, it will not give you the date of creation. I think in the Linux, we have two commands, right? One is ll and one is ls. What is the difference? One will give you the size of the object, date of creation, owner, everything. And one command only give you the list of the files and folders the same way. Okay. So here it is showing the correct bucket names only. That means we got connected to the correct S3, correct Amazon account. Right? Okay. So now what is the next one? On which bucket we are trying to enable MFA delete? On which bucket? This is the bucket name. Right? This is the bucket name. This is the bucket name on which we would like to enable MFA delete. And to enable MFA delete, what is the minimum requirement? Versioning must be enabled. Already we have verified that the versioning is enabled on your S3 bucket using the browser. How can I verify that the versioning is enabled on the S3 bucket? Through AWS CLI tools. What is the command for that? Whatever you can see with the hashtag, that is the comment or a description. And the remaining, the bottom one is the actual command. So this is the command to get the status of the versioning on the particular bucket. So here you can see AWS S3 API. These two are a common. And what we are doing is we are getting the status of the bucket versioning. And on which bucket? On this particular bucket. By using this command, we are going to check the status of the versioning. AWS S3 API, those two are common words. And we are trying to get bucket versioning -- bucket. On which bucket? That is here we mentioned. Okay, right. So let me clear the screen. Okay. So now what I'm getting? Enabled. If the versioning is not enabled, then what message you will get? If the versioning is not enabled, then which message you will get, or what is the output you can expect? Disabled. Okay. Then I will do one thing. We have one bucket called access logging or something, right? On which we don't enable versioning. Where is that? This is the one. On this, we didn't enable the versioning. Let me check the status of that particular bucket. Are you sure you will get disabled? Let us see. What happened? If the versioning is not enabled, you will get empty output. It will show enabled if the versioning is enabled. It will not show disabled if it is not enabled. It will give you blank output. It will give the output as an enabled if the versioning is enabled. If not enabled, you don't get any message. Okay, right. So we got the minimum requirement of that particular S3 bucket to enable the MFA delete, right? Now we need to enable the MFA delete. Already we observed that we cannot enable MFA delete using the browser, right? So what we have to do is we have to enable MFA delete using the CLI tools. Using the CLI tools. I will explain the command. Just wait. Okay. So bucket name and AWS not required. Okay. And here you have to write to be executed by root user only. Only root user can do that. A normal user cannot. or delete action also you can check with the root user, that doesn't matter, to be executed by root user only. Okay, so here you can see that the first command is AWS S3 API, that's a common, and here put bucket versioning on this particular bucket and versioning configuration status enabled. So here, if the versioning status is enabled, then MFA delete will be enabled. By using this command on the particular bucket, MFA delete will be enabled. But the root user got MFA enabled, right? We have to provide the MFA code. How to provide the MFA code is, in this particular place, after dash dash MFA, this obviously, this is the MFA code, right? But this MFA code is generating on which device? On my mobile, I have a device, right? That particular device is identified by Amazon using ARN. Using ARN, Amazon resource name. So how to get the ARN of root user's MFA device? Log into root user. Go to the security credentials, the way how you can enable the MFA. So click on MFA. So this is the ARN. Amazon will identify your multi-factor authentication device using this serial number. Okay, ARN. Replace. I replaced it. And this 442230, right? That I have to replace with the current code 616350. Now copy everything, paste it here, click on enter. So I can enable MFA delete on that particular S3 bucket. I enabled now. So how to verify that? If you go to that particular S3 bucket, and if you go to the properties, you can see that the MFA delete got enabled. So what is the bucket name? This is the one, right? Click on properties. What is the status? Enabled. So now no object can be deleted permanently, right? So to cross check that, I will upload one object. I will upload one object, any object, that doesn't matter. So one object is available in the bucket which cannot be deleted permanently, right? So how can I delete this object permanently? Click on show versions, select the version, delete. What is the message? You cannot delete object versions because multi-factor authentication delete is enabled for this bucket. So is there any option that I can provide the MFA delete and I can delete the object through the browser? No, you cannot delete. Object can be deleted using the CLI only, and that too by providing MFA code. So now what we do is, let us try to delete the same object as a root user without providing the MFA code. Without providing the MFA code, I would like to delete the object without providing the MFA code. Try deleting the object permanently without MFA. Whenever you're trying to delete the object permanently, so if you see the command AWS S3 API delete object from the bucket, here you have to give the bucket name. You have to give the bucket name, dash dash key. What is the meaning of a key? Object name. Object name is called as a key. What is the object name? Version.txt. Then version ID. Which version you would like to delete? This is the version ID of the object. You have to provide that version ID. Now we are trying to delete an object's version permanently, right? Let me paste that. You will get an error message. An error occurred when calling the delete object operation. MFA authentication must be used for this request. Even the root user cannot delete the object without providing the MFA. How to provide the MFA? Just simple thing, this one. This one to be added. Try deleting the object. Permanently with MFA code. So you can see everything is same. Instead, it will be added as -- MFA, the ARN. But obviously the code byte got changed, right? By now, because every 60 seconds, the code will be changed. So you have to update with the new code. And this particular version got deleted. If I go to the S3 bucket and let me refresh, you cannot see any object. This is how you can enable MFA delete on S3 buckets, so that no user can delete the object unless they use the CLI tools or SDK or REST APIs, and by providing the MFA code only they can delete it. Otherwise they cannot. And also you have to remember that only the root user can enable or disable the MFA. Yes, user can delete the object if they have the permissions and MFA enabled. Actually, we use the user one also, right? While you're doing the practical, the last commands, execute those commands using the user one. Like while you're deleting the object, just try to delete by configuring with the user one. Like type AWS space configure again, configure with the user one credentials. Then whatever the commands you execute, they will be executed as user one. Okay. So any user can delete if they had the permission, but enable and disable can be done by the root user only. A regular IAM user, even with full permissions also, they cannot enable that. Okay. Right. So this is about MFA delete. And we have one more concept, which is not related to S3, but generally we will discuss about that with the S3 only, which is a Snow family, which is a kind of data migration service, by using which you can migrate a huge data from your on-prem data center to the cloud or vice versa. In that Snow family, we have a different options available, like Snow Cone, Snowball, Snow Mobile. We have different things available. That part we can cover in the tomorrow's session. Okay. Right. Any questions on the MFA delete? Okay. And we have to verify the access logging bucket, right? Just give me a second. Let me go there. Okay. It seems I missed the /. Okay. Anyways, here, these are the files. So let me click any file and let me click on open. So this is how it looks like, the log file. So here on 8th July 2022, 12:56. What is the 12:56? That's a UST time. Approximately that was 1 p.m., right? To convert that into India, you have to add 5.5, approximately like 6:30. At 6:30, from this particular IP address, what is that IP address? This location IP. I will show you. If I go to Google and if I do what is my IP, this is my IP address. This is the IP address of this particular location. Like whatever the internet connection I am using, that is having this particular public IP. Because you can see that is the IP here, right? And this is the object. This is the object which got uploaded into this particular bucket, my bucket 08 July 2022. And you can see what we call that the success code is 200. And you can see it is got uploaded using the S3 console browser. If you upload using the CLI or something, that will be available there. And out of those, like it will get like a lot of unnecessary information also. This is required for sysops administrators. What they do is they will use some tools. Even Amazon is having some different tools called Cloud Trial and everything, by using which they can monitor the logs. They can differentiate the logs, and they can generate in a human readable format and all the things. So this is how the logs will be generated. But generally we don't use that, but you have to know what is that server access log. Okay, right. Any questions on this S3 topic? Like whatever we have covered as of now. CLI tool commands. There will be thousands of commands based on the which command you would like to know? Okay, for uploading the object, I think we have used, let me show you that. Like you would like to upload the object from your laptop to S3 bucket, right? So basically the command will be AWS space S3 sync, and then a source space a destination, right? So here you have to use, then command will be AWS space S3 sync. What is the source? Your laptop, right? So where is the files? In which folder? Where? For every file, for every folder, there will be some location, right? What is the location? Desktop. So how you have given the path? Have you given desktop or something? No. Copy path. Okay, so here is the folder. Where is the folder? Here is the folder. How you have given? Okay. This is the location, right? Okay. This is the location you have to give. No, not this one. Destination. Bucket. Which bucket you would like to upload? Let me take one example of my S3 buckets. To which bucket you would like to upload? Let us say this bucket, my bucket 08 July, right? So this is the bucket name. Wait a second. / Okay. This is the S3 URI, or you can manually also you can type, but just I'm copying it. S3 colon / bucket name. Okay. Let me copy. So whatever the objects available in the S3 will be uploaded to this particular bucket. Yeah, this is laptop to S3. S3 bucket to laptop. Give this as a source. To which folder you would like to download that, give as a destination. Just revert that. If you would like to copy from one bucket to another bucket, give both the bucket names. Here also you have to give the bucket name 1, bucket name 2. The syntax will be this one: source and destination. That is the common. You can decide which can be a source and which can be a destination. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Okay. Object lock. Okay. I don't know. Let me show you. I think already we enabled the retention mode, right? So object lock. Okay. Uploading the object. Okay, one second. In the compliance, let me, which kind of retention mode you are talking about? Compliance or governance? Governance. Okay. Yeah, governance, that will ask you. You can replace it. Okay, one second. I think compliance you cannot change, right? Okay, let me upload another object using the retention mode, and just we can see your requirement. Because in the governance mode, root user can delete the object, right? So he can replace. There is no doubt in that. He can replace. Okay, what happened? Obviously, he will get. Root user can replace it. A normal user cannot, right? But in the compliance mode, no user can. Even IAM user also can do that, but they require some special permissions. Special permission is like something like get object retention mode, replace retention, some kind of special permissions are there. If the IAM user is having those permissions, even a regular user also can do that. But by default, no user can do that. Root user can in the governance mode, but in the compliance mode, even the root user cannot delete or cannot replace. Okay, so why we yesterday, while we are creating the bucket policy, why we haven't enabled ACL? What is the use of ACL? By using the ACL, you can make any object as a public, right? But I am using the bucket policy to make the object as a public. I don't require ACL, right? I don't use ACL to convert any object into public. That's why I disabled it. Let us say one thing, like you have, you locked a room with a lock and key. Okay. So there are two ways to open it. One is like by using the key, you can unlock it, or by using your fingerprint, you can unlock it. As of now, or let us say not fingerprint, by something by scanning your face or something, that will be opened automatically. As of now, you have to carry the key and you have to unlock it. Recently, they implemented a new feature that whenever you are coming in, it will scan you and the door will be automatically open. So in that case, do I need to carry the key with me to enter into the room? No, because based on the new feature, automatically I can enter. If there is no such feature exists, then I have to carry the key and I need to unlock it. ACL is a feature by using which you can convert your object into public. That is the first thing we have done, right? But we have another feature called bucket policy, by using which we can convert any object into public automatically. It's a kind of automatic because we applied on the bucket, so everything will be public. ACL, by using ACL, you cannot make the entire bucket as a public. You can convert your objects into public. But by using the bucket policy, the entire bucket became a public. Okay. Okay, so if you uploading the objects from your, what we call that, from your laptop to S3 bucket, are you going to lose all your objects from the laptop? No, just there's a copy, that is not a move. If you move the object will be deleted from your laptop and the object will be moved to the S3 bucket. I think you guys know the difference between cut paste and copy paste, right? Copy paste means the source will be available and you can copy the same files to the destination. If you cut and paste, the source folder objects will be removed and that will be moved to the destination. But whatever the sync we are doing, that is not a moving, that is just copy. So you don't lose any data from your source bucket or your laptop. Okay, any other questions? Okay, so if you are clear, we can stop the session and tomorrow we can go with the snow family. That is mostly like a theoretical part. Just I will show you how to do that and everything. I will explain you so that you can understand it, why we cannot do the practical. Because to do the practical, it will cost you like $300 to $400 for a request. That's a kind of a physical data migration, right? So just I will show you how to do that, how to request, how to configure. Those things we can see, and we will discuss what is the purpose of that. Okay. So all the different types of Snow family devices, those things we can discuss. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. We'll continue tomorrow.